I am fortunate to have had a pretty successful and long-lasting career in design and branding. But it's only in the last few years that I've actually started to use Canva as one of my design tools, despite the fact that Canva was established in 2013. And I wanted to share a bit about that today so that you can understand why I had that resistance, and also that we could talk about Hi folks, in case we haven't met, I am Wayne. I am a creative director and brand designer, and I work with coaches and creators to uplevel their branding and visuals. So I didn't study or qualify as a designer. I taught myself pretty much everything I know and learned from people I worked with, and slowly worked my way up as a designer. And the only reason I tell you that is because it's part of the reason that I resisted using Canva for so long, but we'll come back to that. So one of the things that prompted me to record this video today is that I saw a reel from James Barnard, who is a great logo designer and content creator, where he shared about a reel he'd posted earlier where he mentioned that he'd learned something new, a tool that he didn't know existed. And unfortunately, the response to that from a lot of other designers was to criticize him and tell him he wasn't a real designer because he didn't know that, and show that they had known it forever. And I found that really sad and really annoying, because that kind of competing to show that you're better than someone else in your industry goes against everything that I believe in terms of cooperation being better than competition. But I do think it's important to understand where that comes from. Design and designers have been undervalued for a long time. Design has always been seen as a nice to have. And increasingly, it's come to be regarded as something that pretty much anyone can do. And tools like Canva have led to that feeling that just anyone can pick up the tool and use it, and they can call themselves a designer. However, the facts and the figures don't really support that. In fact, the facts and figures show that design, proper, good, professional design, makes a huge difference to the bottom line of a company. Here are some figures that I thought were interesting. So research has shown that businesses that embrace design generate 32% more revenue and 56% more shareholder returns on average than companies that don't. 94% of consumers cited design as the main reason for leaving or mistrusting a company's website. And in fact, judgments on whether a company or a brand were credible are 75% based on the overall aesthetics of that brand. Research shows that in online courses, better design leads to better comprehension, less confusion, more engagement, and better results, which obviously, if you're selling an online program or course, then looks favorably for you and gives you more social proof going forward. But despite those facts and figures, design is still seen as a nice to have, and it's the first thing that gets cut in a recession. Now, in the last 10 years, design has essentially become democratized, like a lot of industries, because of the internet and access to design tools. But I think for a long time, as designers, we kind of used our tools as badges of honor, and they proved that we were professional designers. And this goes back to what I was saying about my resistance to use Canva. As a designer, on a daily basis, I use Adobe Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, all these other tools, and of course there are many more like that now. But they almost acted as proof that I was a professional designer. And so when a lot of my clients were using Canva in-house, it started to feel like using Canva proved that I wasn't a professional designer, which I think played into my insecurity because I didn't have that qualification. I didn't have a certificate or a diploma that said that I was a designer, despite the fact that I'd made a very successful career in it. Of course, it's not just that. With Canva being a tool that anyone can use, I saw a lot of really bad design created in Canva. But the more I explored it, the more I realized that Canva, like Adobe Photoshop or anything else, is a tool. And tools can be used to create great art and even greater atrocities. And boy, are there some atrocities that I've seen created on all of those tools. Adobe now has a tool called Adobe Express, which is essentially a tool that does the same thing as Canva. But I see a lot of professional designers way more comfortable saying that they use Adobe Express than they would be saying they use Canva. And the only difference, really, ironically, is branding and positioning. Because it's an Adobe tool, it is still seen as something that professional designers use, or real designers. And I fell into that trap myself in resisting using Canva for so long. But what happened was that as my clients used Canva and wanted to use Canva, that meant I excluded myself from a number of jobs because they didn't want to rely on somebody having access to expensive design tools when they had Canva that they could use at an affordable price. And so actually, I did myself a disservice. And now I often use Adobe Acrobat, all these other things to create designs that I then share with my client in versions in Canva for them to amend or edit without having to rely on me. I haven't led to myself being replaced as a designer. I have just found out where I can add value and where they can then take it from there. And this goes back to something that I say fairly often to people, and that is, especially in the online space, we seem to feel like we have to be everything to everyone. And the bottom line is that everybody seems to think that they're a designer, they can design. And the truth is, they're not. Not everyone is a designer, not everyone has a good eye for design. By trying to do everything yourself, you are in fact taking a lot of time away from things you could be using your area of expertise on. You cannot replace the value that a great brand or just general designer adds to your business and your materials. But that doesn't mean that tools like Canva aren't the perfect way to learn, to up-level your skills, to learn more about design, and to get more familiar with what looks good, what works, and what doesn't. And of course, a lot of people are starting out from scratch, so they just don't have the budget to work with a designer. And that's one of the reasons I started Created by Wayne, was so that I could create templates and materials that were more affordable and easily accessible for people who couldn't afford to work with me one-on-one. And so I think it's really important for those people who are not designers to understand that actually, yes, you can learn and expand and grow your knowledge of design, which I think is so important, but know where your limits are and know when to engage a professional designer. And for designers, I encourage you to find where your place is, find where you can add the most value. And honestly, ripping each other down to prove you're better than another designer is not the way to go. And for me, learning what Canva can do now, how far it's come and how much it's grown, has actually been really eye-opening because it's an incredibly powerful tool and one that I hope to learn more about myself. Because going back to that earlier reel by James Barnard, the one thing that struck me is that people shaming someone for something they didn't know is such a sure sign that those people are going to be lagging behind at some point. Because if you are not learning all the time and expanding your knowledge and growing, then you're either too arrogant or you're stagnating. And neither of those are a recipe for success. So, in short, I just wanted to say that my resistance to Canva had more to do with me and how I felt about myself as a designer and the stigma that was placed on it than it did with the tool. Tools can be used for good and for bad, and that goes twice for design. But I'm very glad that Canva is something that is accessible to everybody because it's giving me a chance to work with people and to make design accessible to people who could really use it to up-level their business, their brand, and to make a huge impact on their bottom line through great design. So that's it from me for today, folks. Thank you very much for hanging around through this little mini rant. I appreciate you being here. Please, as always, let me know in the comments what you think about this and whether you've had some resistance to using tools like this or how you found learning tools like Canva to be. And if there are any other resources or tutorials that would be useful for you, please just drop a message in the comments or send me an email and I'll add those to the list of things we are already creating for you. Thanks again, have a fabulous day and see you next week.